What up, fellow nerds, and welcome to Not Your Status Quo. I'm Doug, and today we're going to be reviewing Season 2, Episode 5 of The Boys.
Hi all, I'm Dave, and remember, if you like what you see, please leave us a like and subscribe to our channel.
And this is Keith, and be sure to ring that bell to be notified of future content. And hey, tell your friends about us as well. They're going to love us, but don't let them show it like Stormfront shows Homelander her affection, unless there's circumstances.
Warning, from here on out, there will be spoilers, so watch at your own risk.
This episode really deals with the aftermath of last episode, Butcher dealing with Becca's refusal to leave with him, Huey dealing with the end of his relationship with Annie, Kimiko blaming herself for her brother's death and not getting her revenge against Stormfront, A-Train getting kicked out of the Seven, and Homelander trying to handle all the PR stuff himself.
Man, what an episode it was. After what felt like a bit of a slog last week, Episode 5, We Gotta Go Now, was back to form, at least in my opinion anyway. So we still had character development, but we had a bit of action to kind of sandwich it real nicely. If last episode's theme was finding and ultimately losing love, this episode is definitely dealing with all of that fallout. Just about all the main characters are at their lowest points. Well, except Stormfront, who seems to be doing just fine. But more on that later, though. In addition to what Keith mentioned, Queen Maeve is living in fear of Homelander and what he might end up doing to her girlfriend. A-Train having to film a movie with the Seven, knowing he's already out. Ugh.
Kimiko is definitely dealing with her guilt poorly, taking on hit jobs, to mask her pain. But I have to disagree with Doug's thoughts on last week's episode. Though it was more acting driven, I think it was a vital episode for the show. We need that background, man. And here's a quick Dave theory. There's no way that this is really the end for Annie and Huey. We've all seen enough of these shows to know that when one person's in a relationship says it can't happen anymore, it ain't really over. I mean, they both like each other. It's just the circumstances, and I think that'll push them back together. So they'll get back together for sure. I mean, she said the only time she doesn't feel like she has a loaded gun to her head is when she's with Huey.
To quote Billy Joel once again, "You may be right," but we'll have to wait and actually see. As far as this episode, though, each character realizes that they're going to have to leave the past behind, and they're going to have to fight their way into the future.
After Becca decides to stay and take care of Ryan, Butcher goes off grid. He gets into a fight just to feel something and ends up at his aunt's house. Huey gives him a call, and from the code in which Billy speaks, MM is able to figure out where he is. Billy also calls Huey his canary, a callback to something MM said in episode 3, but is there more to it?
Bit of a funny moment here. When Butcher's in the supermarket after getting his ass completely handed to him, he ends up picking up a bag of Homelander peas from Vought Fresh Farms. And I don't think Disney is making food quite yet under the Marvel label, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if I went to the store and I happened to see something like that.
Huey, on the other hand, is more focused and thinks that if they complete their mission and take Vought down, he can get Starlight back. I think this will happen before that, but let's move on. MM does figure out where Butcher is, and he and Huey ambush him at his aunt's house. But Billy has no interest in reuniting and tries to leave. And when he sees Black Noir on a rooftop nearby, I love this because Black Noir's powers and tendencies haven't really been explored, so we don't know what he'll do.
It was so obvious that Black Noir was there. I mean, he was just silhouetted up on that rooftop where anyone could see. And it's always little things that sometimes bug me in an episode, and this was it. I just thought, for being a superpowered ninja, he would have never been seen that easily, which begs the question, did he let himself be seen by Billy so that Mr. Edgar could figure out what information he had? I mean, Mr. Edgar always does seem to be a couple steps ahead, but let us know what you think in the comments.
We also learned that Huey resembles Butcher's little brother, who was the only one who could calm him down. Is this why he recruited Huey in the first place, to calm him down?
Meanwhile, the Seven are making Dawn of the Seven. And this is clearly a nod to Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. Obviously, one of the greatest portrayals of Batman in any movie. During the filming, Queen Maeve delivers the corny hero line as she walks amongst the rubble where people are probably dying from whatever previously filmed battle just happened. And this is a bit of a tip to the cap to all superhero movies, really.
And we see Homelander is really doing his best to send Queen Maeve over the edge. He should have learned how to handle people a little better from Stillwell. We get a look at the beginning of her plan later, with her going to see the Deep and saying, "We're going to take this motherfucker down." Are we going to see a little soup-on-soup fight this season? Maybe Stormfront and Homelander against Queen Maeve and anyone else she can recruit? I'm guessing Queen Maeve is playing more of a long game, and we'll get to her taking down Homelander post-season 2, maybe 3 or 4.
Noticeably, the other 6 are acting in their scenes, but when it comes to Homelander's scene with A-Train, and it finishes, we see it isn't even really him. Instead, we see him later in a director's chair. Homelander also says, "This Joss rewrite really sings," which is an obvious jab at the Justice League movie. And honestly, I can't wait until season 3 to see the boys' version of #release the Snyder Cut.
I would guess that the queen of social media, Stormfront, would have something to do with that. Speaking of the Seven's little Nazi, during the filming, she stops to talk to A-Train and mentions she used to be a member of the Church of the Collective back when it used to be pure, before they started letting in all kinds of people, stating some people are quality and some are garbage. A-Train got her message. Could our previous theory be correct?
Not to mention, Dave, she drinks everything, including bottled water, through a straw. Something Hitler probably did too.
And Homelander accidentally kills a bystander during a save and incorrectly tries to smooth it over in the press. When he can't, he goes to Stormfront, who is more than happy to help him, and she, being a master manipulator, says, "What are you ever going to do to repay me?"
So obviously Homelander thanks her by having very violent floating soup sex. But it may just be a lunatic that she's looking for.
So, could this mean that our theory is correct about Stormfront wanting to have Homelander's baby?
That very well could be. But let's not forget about another Stormfront encounter in this episode with Starlight. Stormfront knows that Starlight is the one who leaked Compound V to the press. But Annie is no slouch, and she has information of her own. She knows that Stormfront is Liberty. Homelander enters and the inevitable battle is stopped, but for how long?
During the confrontation, Starlight's eyes glow as she begins to activate her powers. Is this the show foreshadowing our theory of Starlight being living kryptonite to Stormfront? Let us know what you think in the comments.
And as Dave mentioned earlier, Kimiko is dealing with the pain of losing her brother by becoming a hired assassin. Her scenes are extremely graphic, and it is apparent that her abilities are evolving. She is shot several times during her gruesome scene and heals almost immediately and without pain. Frenchie, always wanting to help, tracks her down and realizes what she is doing. When she decides not to stop and go back home, Frenchie tells her, and I quote, "Go be a monster," end quote. And does Kimiko want the Seven? And is Kimiko doing all of this just so the Seven will find her and she can confront Stormfront?
All right, we got some quick hits and new theories. We mentioned that Billy may want to have Huey around because he reminds him of his brother. But we have a few more ideas, such as with Queen Maeve at the end of her rope, will she be able to recruit enough people with her to take that motherfucker down? Will this play out this season or over several seasons?
Something we noticed, which has definitely carried over from the first 3 episodes this season, the whole girls get it done moment from the Vought advertisements and the film set. They were totally poking fun at 2 very similar moments from Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
And Vought clearly knows the history of Stormfront, being a Nazi and all that, but why have her in the Seven? They have to think that people are going to find out. And is she there only as sort of a wag the dog moment to get the news story off of Compound V making the superheroes and not God choosing them? I think it would be a good way for Edgar to sort of push that story away.
During one scene, Stormfront is talking on the phone with a nurse from the Sage Grove Center, who's played by Shawn Ashmore. He was revealed to be cast earlier this year as Lamplighter. And as a bit of a hint to that, he's sitting there the whole time playing with a Zippo lighter, since his powers are of the fiery variety. And if Stormfront wasn't a menacing enough villain to deal with, having Lamplighter with her might be even scarier.
Fun fact, you guys may recognize Shawn Ashmore from his role playing Bobby, a.k.a. Iceman, in the X-Men movies. And also, first season of Smallville, he snaked Clark's powers and became all-powerful for a few days. So now for our final thoughts and ratings. I thought this show was, as far as excitement and action, this show was a definitely step up from last week. We learned a little bit more about each character, and I think that it's going a different direction probably than the other guys think. I think that in the end, Annie and Huey are going to get back together. That's going to be a main part of the show. I think that, they're all in a bad place right now, and they're going to somehow piece it back together. Overall, I give this show, same as last week, 8.5 out of 10.
For this episode, I think it's a pretty significant step back from last week's, but there's a lot of good. That being Colby Minifie as Ashley, I thought was tremendous in this episode. Her visible fear and nervousness when talking to Homelander was absolutely tremendous. And just how different it was and how strong she was when A-Train confronted her that he wasn't going to read those lines. She really put him in his place, and it's amazing how differently she was between the two superheroes. Homelander, who's known to murder people with his eye vision, and A-Train, who seems, when he's not on Compound V, a little more reasonable. And then we got that scene with Homelander when he went to do his own little thing for PR during that news conference or press conference, whatever you want to call it, and he was having a manic episode. And I thought the music during that was incredibly spot on. And then the little things in this episode, I think they did really well. The look between MM and Huey when Billy says that Becca didn't want out. And then I also loved the plan that MM had for dealing with Black Noir, hunting them down to report a natural gas leak. I mean, I think we all thought there was going to be a huge knockdown drag out, not them reporting to get the authorities out there, and then basically setting up their own little Home Alone adventure. And now to the bad. Once again, I'm coming back to it. I know I probably shouldn't be bothered by it, but the fact that Black Noir was so easily seen on that rooftop just irked me the entire episode. He is a ninja. He is a superhero. He could have easily made it so that kids riding down the street on their bikes wouldn't have seen him. But they might have done it for the episode. But still, it was bothering me, and I really couldn't get past it. But, I mean, overall, the episode was still great. I think all of these episodes are great. They do such a wonderful job. And even though this is a step down from last week, I still give it an 8.0 out of 10.
So even though most of the scenes stayed in the same location, the movie set for the Soups and Aunt Judy's house for the boys, there definitely seemed to be more tension in the air. While I certainly wasn't fooled by the whole doppelganger pretending to be Stillwell, I will admit the scene where Homelander imagines lasering an entire crowd of protesters, that made my mouth drop open for a minute. You got me. I mean, seriously, because that's totally something he would do. On top of that, Homelander's mental breakdown as he rewatches his failure in front of said protesters was perfect acting on the part of Anthony Starr. The mixture of cry laughing and cursing as he's slamming his fists against the wall, it really made you feel his current stress and his mental state of losing what's most important to him, the love and the admiration of the crowd, or, as he's discussing with Ashley, his points. So I am glad that we finally got introduced to Lamplighter in this episode, but I'm horrified to learn that he's working with or even for Stormfront, and he may end up killing a kid for her. Finally, that smashing scene with Dream on in the background was one hell of a way to end an episode and leave the viewers wanting to see what comes next. I mean, not with Stormfront and Homelander. Nobody wanted to see that. But anyway, to answer the question that I posed in the last video, and touching on one of Keith's theories about Stormfront's role with Vought, perhaps she's actually a new superpowered Stillwell. It could be that she's really their way of controlling Homelander. You know, she's got the ability to give him basically what he wants, and she's obviously sturdy enough to withstand him, so she doesn't have to fear him. But the real question now is, does Vought control her, or does she have her own mission? Overall, I gave this episode a rating of 9 out of 10. I thought it was great. Go watch The Boys.
And we all love the addition of Terror, Butcher's dog, in this episode. Will he stay as part of the cast moving forward? What do you think? Please leave a comment below and we can start a conversation. Until next time, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.